Show with your host, Lonnie Clark. We stand together and accept that we now live in a world transformed by Fukushima. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 8 a.m. to 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time here on UCY.TV radio. We relentlessly engage every ear that listens. We expose and confront the complete lack of accountability for the nuclear industry. Consider social engineering programs who view our bodies, minds, and souls as assets on a balance sheet. We discuss vital current issues, interview activists, and engage our audience in an effort to allow all voices to be heard. The Age of Fission radio show creates a venue that all will choose. We encourage our listeners to reclaim their power and their courage to take action and save our planet from the ravages of greed and indifference. Our actions matter. Every voice matters. We remind our listeners that happiness is resistance. Love is greater than fear.
Good morning, UCY.TV radio listeners. This is Lonnie Clark with the Age of Fission radio show. It is February 8th, 2018. It's 8:02 in the morning, so I guess 2 and 8s are good luck right now. So I always look at numbers. Thank you for joining us. Jerome called me last night, and Jerome Hebert, who's normally our host on Thursdays, he got a little bit of sick this week and asked me to cover for him, so I am. And I've found a few stories this morning that I thought were really interesting. If anybody wants to give us a call, as usual, when I do these shows live like this without a guest, you can give us a call at 718-717-8106 if you want to discuss anything that's on your mind. Otherwise, we're going to be listening to what's on my mind, as a matter of fact. So let me get to these stories that I pulled. I found a few very good stories, actually, that were... It's kind of a shock when you just type in, like, in nuclear news or whatever it is, right? When you just go say what the nuclear news is. And I actually just X'd out of the first one I wanted to start with. So I'm going to look at my history and go back to it because the title of it just blew me away, to be honest. It was pretty interesting. Forget North Korea. These U.S. states house dangerous nuclear weapons right in your neighborhood. So let's get right into it. I have 3 or 4 stories for you about our friend, Mr. Nuclear, who, as we're being convinced, doesn't hurt us. Just like the chemicals they're spraying in the air. That's not hurting us either. Okay, so this was written by Karen Bennett, February 5th, 2018, on thecheatsheet.com. These days, headlines alert us often about the prospect of a North Korean nuclear attack. According to some reports, no American city isn't within reach of the rogue country's nuclear weapons. But did you ever stop and consider the nuclear weapons housed in your own backyard might be even more of a threat? The United States currently houses 4,000 nuclear warheads, and just one of them could likely obliterate the city where you live within minutes. Back in 2013, U.S. Air Force Lieutenant General James Kowalski, who commanded nuclear weapons, provided some unsettling commentary on this. After saying a Russian nuclear attack was just a remote possibility hardly worth discussing, he added that the real threat for America today is an accident. The greatest risk to my force is doing something stupid. Which, as we know, the nuclear industry does something stupid all the time. Here we'll take a look at, let me see if I'm going to open this up just in case we have time. I don't want to lose it. Here we'll take a look at the states in the U.S. that house nuclear weapons, as well as the population size near each site. Washington. Population 3.7 million. A large chunk of the United States nuclear weapons are 18 miles northwest of downtown Seattle. The 294 million underground storage complex is adjacent to the Bangor submarine base. More than 1,300 nuclear warheads are thought to be stored there. Together they pack a combined explosive power equal to more than 14,000 Hiroshima bombs. To bring public attention to the proximity of this nuclear stockpile, a local peace group placing ads regarding it on 14 Seattle transit buses in 2016. Boy, I'm sorry, I messed up that sentence there, guys. I'm going to open up this. Controversial ads. And this, I'm going to go back to the story, but I want to come back. If we have time, I'm going to read this about these controversial ads in Seattle. Number 2, New Mexico. Albuquerque population 887,000. Underneath the city of Albuquerque, New Mexico is an underground nuclear weapons storage facility with the potential to house 19% of all nuclear weapons in the world. The center, located at Kirtland Air Force Base, is reportedly the single largest concentration of nuclear weapons anywhere. Some 2,000 nuclear weapons are believed to be stored inside, although the official number is classified. Many of the weapons at the facility are waiting to be disarmed, according to a 2016 report. Wow. So they're fully armed. For this process, they are taken out of the base and transported via Interstate 40 to a plant in Amarillo, Texas, where the disarmament happens. Oh my gosh. Okay, so there's another story that I'm going to read to you about the disarmament. This is pretty interesting. Number 3 is North Dakota. Minot population 49,000. That's near Minot Air Force Base. North Dakota plays a big role in the United States nuclear weapons arsenal. In fact, nuclear assets in North Dakota have never been more relevant, according to U.S. Representative Kevin Kramer. Minot Air Force Base, located 13 miles from the city of Minot, has one of the nation's 2 B-52 bomber bases. This facility also oversees 150 of the Air Force's 450 Minuteman III nuclear missiles. In October 2017, Vice President Mike Pence visited the nuclear weapons base in a move seen as a reminder to North Korea of U.S. nuclear capabilities. In one alarming safety-related incident in 2007, a plane containing live nuclear missiles flew from the Minot Air Force Base to Louisiana. The nukes were supposed to have been removed prior to sending the missiles, but somehow personnel never removed them. Retired Air Force General Eugene Hibiger said of the mishap, "I have been in the nuclear business since 1966 and am not aware of any incident more disturbing." Yeah, well, just wait till Trader Trump gets a hold of this military. Okay, Montana is number 4. Great Falls population 82,000. In Great Falls, Montana, sits a small ranch house bearing a hand-etched cedar plank that reads, "Ace in the Hole." See, the house is simply a facade for a nuclear launch control center, which lies underneath it. Oh man, so we're going to go start looking for a house that says Ace in the Hole. It's part of the Maelstrom Air Force Base. Oh, in fact, 150 silos housing nuclear weapons dot the surrounding countryside. Wow. These giant Minuteman III nuclear missiles are ready to be deployed at a moment's notice. They are reportedly 20 times more powerful than the atomic bomb dropped on Hiroshima and can target any and can reach any target in the world within 30 minutes. Not much attention is drawn to the silos, which may be because the military base drives the local economy to the tune of $300 million to $350 million annually. Well, I wonder what that economy would do in Montana if they did not have that. What kind of economy could they develop? This is the backwards thinking that we need the military because it supports our economy. That is just such backwards thinking. Wyoming. Cheyenne population 96,000. Like in Montana, you'll also find missiles spread out over a wide area in Wyoming. These missile fields surround Warren Air Force Base in the southeastern part of the state. In fact, on the stretch of the Interstate 80 between Cheyenne, Wyoming and Lincoln, Nebraska, you'll drive past scattered powerful Minuteman III nuclear missiles. Air Force personnel work in shifts taking on responsibility for the nuclear weapons security and maintenance. And if the order comes, they will launch the warheads within a matter of minutes. Man, wouldn't that be nice if they said, no, we won't do it. Nebraska, Lincoln population. As mentioned, the stretch of Interstate 80 leading from Cheyenne, Wyoming to Lincoln, Nebraska is dotted with nuclear missiles. A reporter from NPR was invited to tour a remote nuclear base in Dix, Nebraska, where Air Force personnel shifts to oversee 10 nuclear weapons. These personnel train constantly to be able to launch a missile strike at a moment's notice. Crew can be on 24-hour alert twice a week. Each missile the military monitors appears as a tiny rectangle on a screen. Crew members spend long shifts reviewing procedures and watching movies to pass the time. Wow, that's what we're doing with our tax dollars. Watching movies to pass the time. Wait till we have a nuclear war. They watch movies. Number 7, Colorado. Population 2.8 million. As with neighboring states Nebraska and Wyoming, Colorado is home to a number of the total 150 nuclear missiles spread out across these 3 states. In one scary 2014 incident, a mishap occurred involving one such missile silo near Peets, Colorado, about 150 miles northeast of Denver. 3 airmen troubleshooting a nuclear missile accidentally damaged the weapon. After a year, the Air Force told Associated Press the full investigation report was classified. The damaged missile was deemed non-operational and was removed from its underground silo among wheat fields. That sentence alone has me taking pause. The underground missiles are near wheat fields. I'm glad I don't eat wheat anymore. Afterwards, the Air Force said the mishap crew chief did not correctly adhere to technical guidance, which damaged the missile. There are also a half a dozen abandoned Titan silos closer to Denver. Wow. And, of course, they don't tell us how closer. In Missouri, Kansas City population, oh my gosh, 481,000. Missouri has been said to have the 7th most nuclear weapons out of any state. About 55 miles from Kansas City is the Whiteman Air Force Base, one of 3 U.S. bomber bases with nuclear capability. It is the only permanent base for the B-52 Spirit stealth bomber. From there, nuclear weapons can be launched directly to any part of the globe. In 2017, the Kansas City Star called the B-2 the father of all bombs, describing it as the 30,000-pound satellite-guided bomb. And they have a big picture of it. It does look like a satellite, and it does look like a bomb sort of combined. Georgia. Wow. She's not telling us anything about Georgia. Oh, okay. Jacksonville, Florida population. Why would Georgia? Well, let's hear what she has to say about that. Georgia's King's Naval Submarine Base, located 38 miles from Jacksonville, Florida. That's why. Georgia's King Base Naval Submarine Base, located 38 miles from Jackson, Florida, houses 6 nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarines. It appears to have dirt-covered warhead storage facility rather than an underground complex. While more than 36 navies worldwide have submarines, only 6 nations arm them with ballistic missiles: the U.S., Russia, China, France, the United Kingdom, and India. I gotta switch to the page. Oh, I guess that's it. I went forward and that was the end. So, those states, what does this title of this thing say? Well, let's move on to this, because speaking of being on a need-to-know basis, this article came out February 2nd from the U.S. Department of Defense. And then I'm going to read you another story after that from the courts made a decision. Idaho nuclear waste documents won't be made public. So this all comes, they're all sort of tying in here. The insanity around the nuclear issue is that no one seems to remember that whether we use nuclear weapons or not, just having them sit there is harmful to our planet. Even no matter what, it's harmful to the population, it's harmful to the people. This whole insanity over nuclear, I honestly do not comprehend how a single military personnel can believe that nuclear is not the worst thing and ought to be abolished, that we ought to stop the uranium mining. But that's another. Nuke Review calls for the triad modernization to maintain deterrence. This is February 2nd from the Department of Defense, written by Jim Garamoni, DoD News Defense Media Activity. Listen to the language in this one. This actually shocked me, which is why I thought I'd read it to you. The United States must recapitalize the nuclear triad and accompanying command and control system to continue to maintain deterrence into the future, Defense Secretary James N. Mattis, a.k.a. Mad Dog Mattis, wrote in the preface to the Nuclear Posture Review released today. In one of his first acts as president, Donald J. Trump directed Mattis to conduct the review, last conducted in 2010. Nuclear deterrence is based on having credible, effective, and flexible systems in place to ensure no enemy miscalculates. The consequence of launching an attack on the U.S. or its allies would be catastrophic to any country launching a first strike. Do you think that any country in the world doesn't already believe that? I mean, this is the redundancy of these people is so idiotic. They're like completely drunk on power. A credible nuclear deterrent ensures the United States cannot be blackmailed by rogue countries and allows American diplomats, if we had them, to negotiate from strength, Mattis wrote in the foreword to the report. Well, the problem is we have a lot of diplomats who have not been assigned because we have an incompetent person in the White House. Changing world. Since 2010, the world situation has changed drastically. Great power competition has returned. Russia illegally annexed the Crimean Peninsula in 2014. China has sunk substantial resources into their nuclear forces and is pursuing new nuclear capabilities. North Korea has developed nuclear weapons and is working to mate that capability with intercontinental ballistic missiles. Iran's nuclear program is on hold right now. Yeah, exactly. It's on hold. Modernizing the force does not lower the nuclear threshold, Mattis said. A credible modern force ensures that even a limited use of nuclear weapons against the U.S. and its allies would be more costly to an adversary. This review comes at a critical moment in our nation's history, for America confronts an international security situation that is more complex and demanding than any since the end of the Cold War. Trump has actually reinstituted the Cold War. In this environment, it is not possible to delay modernization of our nuclear forces if we are to preserve a credible nuclear deterrent. The review calls for a flexible, tailored approach that keeps the United States well within treaty limitations. The review says replacement of the nuclear triad and the command and control system must be the priority for the department. Modernizing the nuclear triad. The review finds that the nuclear triad, intercontinental ballistic missiles, submarine-launched ballistic missiles, and nuclear-capable aircraft, that's the nuclear triad, remains the best way to ensure deterrence. The triad provides the president flexibility while guarding against technological surprise or sudden changes in the geopolitical environment, Mattis said in the foreword. To remain effective, we must capitalize our Cold War legacy nuclear forces. These include replacing the current 400 Minutemen III missiles based in silos. The current 400. I'm sorry, you guys, I'm getting caught up on these numbers. This always happens, when I read. These include replacing the current 400 Minutemen III missiles based in silos. The review also calls for replacing 450 ICBM launch facilities to support 400 missiles. Replacement should begin in 2029. They're counting on us being alive in 2029, you guys. They haven't talked to Guy McPherson. Okay. The Navy currently operates 14 Ohio-class ballistic missile submarines. They will be replaced by Columbia-class boomers, the first of which is scheduled to begin construction in 2021. Finally, the Air Force currently has 46 nuclear-capable bombers, split between B-2 stealth bombers and the venerable B-52 Stratofortress. These will be replaced by the B-21 Raider, beginning in the mid-2020s. These capabilities mean nothing if command and control and communication systems are not modernized. Maintaining an effective nuclear deterrent is much less expensive than fighting a war we're unable to deter, Mattis wrote. Maintenance costs for today's nuclear deterrents are approximately 3% of the annual defense budget. How much is that? Additional funding of another 3 or 4% over the decade or more will be required to replace these aging systems. No president wants to use nuclear weapons, he said. But having these terrible weapons are necessary in today's uncertain environment. Nuclear forces, along with our conventional forces and other instruments of national power, are therefore first and foremost directed towards deterring aggression and preserving peace, the secretary wrote. Our goal is to convince adversaries they are going to have nothing to gain and everything to lose from using nuclear weapons. Well, that is true. That was the argument that my IR teacher said, was that's why nuclear weapons keeps the world safe. Because nobody wants to have a war now that we know we can have nuclear war. So it's made the world much safer, even though we have a lot of war going around the world, and most of it is caused by the United States. Let's look at this one. The court just decided February 7th, updated 13 hours ago, written by Keith Riddler of Associated Press of the Daily Herald. Court, Idaho nuclear waste documents won't be made public. Boise, Idaho. U.S. officials don't have to provide details about proposed shipments of extremely radioactive spent commercial nuclear fuel to the country's top government nuclear research laboratory in Idaho, a federal court has ruled. So they're shipping radioactive commercial fuel, and the people don't have to know. The ruling was a major setback to a lawsuit filed by former Governor Cecil Andrus, who had a long history of legal battles with the Energy Department over nuclear waste entering the state, and a firm belief that residents had a right to know the agency's plans. U.S. District Court Judge B. Lynn Windmill, wonder how much money he got from the nuclear industry, on Tuesday ruled The agency acted properly in withholding information sought by Andrus in a Freedom of Information Act request he filed in January 2015. That decision means the documents will not be released to the public anytime soon, but they ultimately could be, as another part of Andrus's argument has yet to play out and the case remains open. Andrus, a Democrat who died in August at age 85, filed a lawsuit in September 2015 after receiving heavily blacked out documents from the federal agency about the spent commercial nuclear fuel shipments. His daughter, Tracy Andrus, has been substituted with the court's approval as the plaintiff in the case. So this is so typical of the nuclear industries. They just wait for people to die. This is the most evil industry in the world. The former governor's longtime aide, Mark Johnson, said he was disappointed with Tuesday's ruling in favor of the Department of Energy, particularly after waiting so long to see what the DOE really has in mind for further waste in Idaho. Come on, you guys know what they have in mind for you. It's going to be, nuclear waste dump site. That's what they're planning on. The lawsuit seeks information about several hundred pounds of proposed research shipments of spent commercial nuclear fuel to the federal agency wants to send to the Idaho National Laboratory. Wow. Let me read that again. I'm sorry. The lawsuit seeks information about several hundred pounds of proposed research shipments of spent commercial nuclear fuel the federal agency wants to send to the Idaho National Laboratory, the nation's top federal nuclear research lab. The shipments require a waiver to a nuclear waste agreement the Energy Department in Idaho signed in 1995, limiting nuclear waste shipments to Idaho. The agreement followed a federal court victories by then Governor Andrus at the time, when he feared the state was becoming a repository for the nation's nuclear waste. Andrus, before his death from complications from cancer, of course, caused by nuclear, probably, contended that signing such a waiver would open the state up for receiving tons of nuclear waste from around the nation, and is why he sought information about the Energy Department's plans. In August 2016, Windmill ordered the Energy Department to provide the court with documents Andrus wanted to determine whether the agency's redactions fell within exemptions to the Freedom of Information Act. Windmill on Tuesday ruled they did. The court will sustain DOE's assertion of privilege and will not require it to provide the plaintiff with a copy of any of the documents. Energy Department officials didn't immediately respond to inquiries from the Associated Press on Wednesday. The agency has previously said it wants to better understand high burn-up spent fuel that is accumulating in nuclear power plants in the U.S. The fuel stays longer in nuclear reactors than any other fuel and produces more energy. But its spent fuel comes out hotter and more radioactive than fuel that does not stay so long in reactors. And remember, Donna Gilmore told us they've now said it can stay in twice as long. In Windmill's 2016 order, he also directed the Energy Department to determine whether the redacted material, quote, would relate to the public's interest rather than that of the agency itself, unquote. He said if the information wasn't in the public's interest, the agency had to explain why and not just cite the policy underlying the exemption. Windmill, in that order, is telling the Energy Department to explain why releasing the information would not be in the public interest of Idaho residents, said Andrus's lawyer, Laird Lucas, with the advocates for the West legal firm that often represents environmental groups. He said the federal agency hasn't yet responded to that part of Windmill's order. Of course they haven't. The former governor in 2016 interview with the Associated Press said he filed the lawsuit because we have to know what's going on. The Energy Department's stonewalling and reluctance lends credence to my suspicion, he said. That's all I have right now, a strong suspicion backed up by a history of an agency that has run roughshod over the public for way too many years. And, sir, you're probably rolling over in your grave right now watching what they're doing now. This is outrageous. So we're on a need-to-know basis, and we really don't need to know, I guess. That's the answer. So I have a few more stories. I really want to get to this one. It's 8:30. I think I'm going to keep on with the nuclear stuff first. I'm going to keep reading this information about nuclear waste, nuclear news, because it's in every single city that we live in, folks. I mean, as you saw in that story, it's not just one city or another, and they really do not tell us when we're in harm's way. In fact, they make an effort not to mention it. It's like, just don't discuss it. And if you get cancer, that governor died of cancer. If I was his daughter, I'd be getting his blood work done to see if he had any nuclear radioactive nuclides in his blood or plutonium, you know. It's outrageous. Okay, so I found a story here. What's the date? This is updated February 7th, 2018 by David Gottfredson, investigative producer by CBS8.com. And I think it looks like they have this. I don't know if they're part of CBS, but interesting. They look like it, kind of. This is the title: San Onofre nuclear waste moved closer to the beach. That's smart. Millions of pounds of nuclear waste is being moved closer to the ocean at the closed down San Onofre nuclear generating station. News 8 recorded video at San Onofre State Beach on the morning of January 31st. The first day workers started moving canisters full of spent fuel rods to dry storage at the nuclear power plant. We were met by armed guards on the public beach. Really. We were met by armed security guards on the public beach. You guys are at your own risk being here in this area. It's your own risk, radiation risk, one unidentified guard warned. And I saw the video, and as he was saying that, the guy didn't have any kind of safety mask on or anything. From the fence line, the video shows a huge crane used to transport stainless steel canisters filled with highly radioactive waste. By the way, those are those same half-inch thick canisters. The dry storage is about 100 feet from the beach. If this, honestly, we're not so serious, folks, it would be, you'd think this was a joke. What you're looking at are 73 silos that are going to hold very large cans filled with very heavy nuclear waste, explained Charles Langley, the executive director of Public Watchdogs. The group opposes the waste move near the beach. Once stored in pools of cold water inside the plant, the hot fuel rods will now be kept outside in silos protected by a cement bunker. If you look at this, you can see that it's 108 feet from the water. The one thing you don't do is put nuclear waste close to the water, said Langley. The canisters are welded shut before the move. It will take more than a year to slowly relocate all of them, one by one, into the silos. Opponents worry the canisters will eventually corrode and crack in the salt air, and if water gets inside, they say, a meltdown could result. These cans are literally a few feet above the saltwater table. They're made of steel. It's good quality stainless steel, but it's only about the diameter of a dime. Wow. A 28-foot high seawall protects the San Onofre safety facility from tidal wave action. But what about an earthquake or a tsunami? Scientists say they've studied the risk and there's nothing to worry about. I see no scenario in which a tsunami, any plausible tsunami at that location, would result in the release of radioactivity, says UCSD from San Diego University, Professor David Victor. Victor is the chair of the San Onofre Community Engagement Panel set up by the owners of the plant, Southern California Edison and SDG&E. He says the plans to store the waste at the beach is temporary until they can find someplace else to put it, perhaps in Texas or New Mexico. Hint, hint, Texas is where it's going to end up. I would not be at all surprised if in the next 5 to 10 years we started to actually see some shipments, said Victor. He said the risk of a canister cracking does not come into play for at least 20 years. So we've got 20 years to not think about it. Don't worry about it. Additionally, the silos will be monitored for corrosion and radioactive release, according to Victor. You would never allow a canister to get to the stage of an actual crack while it's in place. So the monitoring program is in place to make sure you understand the health of the canisters, he said. The waste move is expected to be finished by mid-2019. Efforts to find an alternate storage location are ongoing. Southern California Edison declined to be interviewed for this report. So, from what we understand, they're moving these canisters into these stores. You know how they're monitoring them to make sure they're not. And what did Donna say? That they don't have to monitor all of them. They just have to monitor 1 or 2 of them. So they're not really monitoring all of them. I mean, this is so outrageous. This is like intentional murder of the Pacific Ocean. Okay, here we go. As opposed to living in the UK, which is beginning to feel the pressure of it all, here's a story that I found on the BBC, and it was dated January 25th. Does it have anybody who wrote it? Who wrote it? Doesn't say. It was written by the BBC. Nuclear waste storage will not be forced in any area. The Welsh government said. A nuclear waste storage site will not be built in any community that does not want it, the Welsh government has said. Public consultations have been launched in Wales, England, and Northern Ireland over a geological disposal facility. The program is UK government funded and the Welsh government decided in May 2015 to support the creation of the GDF, Geological Disposal Facility, GDF. Campaigners opposing the plan said the current policy amounts to bribing deprived communities to store waste. The GDF would store highly radioactive material which could take up to 250,000 years to become safe. The amount of waste stored would fill half the Principal Stadium. The purpose of the consultation is to seek views on possible arrangements for working with communities that may wish to discuss hosting the nuclear storage site. A similar consultation will be held by the UK government in respect to England and Northern Ireland. The GDF will be delivered by Radioactive Waste Management Ltd., part of Nuclear Decommissioning Authority. No sites have been selected or are under consideration. Yeah, well, I guess when they really need to do it, they will make sure that they're going to put it wherever they want. Let's just be really clear. Cabinet Secretary for Environment, Leslie Griffiths, said although the Welsh government supported the creation of a GDF, this would not necessarily mean one would be built in Wales or the Welsh government would seek to have one built. Before a final decision citing a GDF is taken, a test of public support in the potential host community would be required, she added. The host area would receive £1 million a year during the selection process. This would increase to £2.5 million a year when the test boreholes are drilled. Wow. Once selected, the community could expect long-term payments up to 1,000 jobs during the construction phase and 550 permanent jobs. The waste would be buried between 200 meters and 100 meters below ground. The UK's Department for Business, Energy and Industry Strategy said this facility would provide a permanent solution to the legacy of higher activity waste that has been accumulating in the UK since the 1940s. Robot Idris from the campaign group People Against Welfa B said, "We should not be producing more any more fresh nuclear waste, as we haven't solved the problem of what to do with the legacy waste. If government is looking at disposing of the waste, it should be looking at the geology of areas first, deciding which areas are suitable, and then asking relevant communities. He said he feared the current policy was a bribe for economically deprived communities to take the waste. Earlier this month, Anglesey A.M. Roon, A.P. Lorworth, said the Welsh government should refuse any plans to create a site to bury nuclear waste. So the Welsh aren't having it, but they support burying it somewhere else, in somewhere else's backyard. Ooh, Lord. Hold on just a second, you guys. I need a drink of water. So we talked about the EPA cleanup site, but there is a pretty interesting article. I didn't read the whole thing, but I did brief through it. It was pretty... The statement of what it says, what does it mean for the nation's other toxic messes? EPA orders cleanup at St. Louis nuclear waste. What does it mean for the nation's other toxic messes? And this is written... Where was this? Oh, this is probably Washington Post. Energy and Environment, but written by Brady Dennis. The EPA on Thursday ordered a long-awaited cleanup of the Superfund site northwest of St. Louis, saying residents living near the landfill contaminated with World War II-era nuclear waste deserve action after waiting 27 years for the federal regulators to issue a decision. You think? EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt's decision to partially evacuate tons of radioactive material from the Westlake landfill over 5 years at an expected cost of $236 million to the liable companies goes beyond a 2008 solution proposed by George W. Bush administration to cover and monitor the waste. The people of St. Louis region deserve clarity and answers, Pruitt said in a statement. I promised them an answer today. I'm making good on that commitment. He added he sought a remedy at the site that would protect public health, comply with the law, and hold potentially responsible parties accountable. Thursday's announcement was also intended to be Exhibit A in demonstrating Pruitt's commitment to revitalizing the agency's Superfund program, which includes the nation's most polluted site, by streamlining and accelerating cleanups. But it underscored how few Superfund sites have simple answers, although nearly all of them generate intense emotions and intense death and disease. We were hoping for full 100% excavation, but we know that would be difficult to accomplish, said Don Chapman, founder of Just Moms STL, an activist group that has long pushed for an extensive excavation with relocation of families near the landfill. Chapman said her group views the outcome as a hard-fought victory, but one that is far from guaranteed given the public comment and cleanup process likely to unfold over the years. We have to stay here and watch it and see it through, she said. I look ahead and see these other big battles coming. We're not going to blink because you can't. We're going to continue to fight even more the radioactive waste removed. Pruitt's decision goes further than the action sought by the Republic Services and Exelon, whose subsidiaries are responsible for the cleanup of the Westlake along the Federal Department of Energy. The companies have argued that the agency's own science shows capping the waste is a far safer option, and that excavating the toxic material could create serious public health risks. It already has, you guys. While the $236 million price tag of the EPA plan is significantly higher than what the firms hope to spend, it is well below the cost projected at nearly $700 million of a full excavation. In a statement, Republic Services said it was pleased that the EPA has finally ended decades of studies and is again issuing a proposed plan for the site. But the company cautioned that a final decision could take years. If they can do anything about it, it will take years. What remains to be seen is whether the decision on Westlake represents how Pruitt is likely to approach other Superfund sites. In recent months, Pruitt has promised aggressive Superfund cleanups and made a public show of butting heads with corporate interests, something that he rarely has done on other issues during his first year at the EPA. Yet, aside from creating a list of 21 targets needing immediate and intense attention, as well as forming a task force to recommend ways to expedite cleanups and reduce the burden on companies involved, Pruitt has explained very little on how he intends to deal with the hundreds of other toxic sites around the country. 1,344 active Superfund sites in the United States. And oh boy, you should see the West Coast. They have a map of it here. You should go to the WAPO and dig up this article. Like, seriously, from New Jersey all through New York, New Jersey, it is just a freaking mess all on the northeast coastline. Like, seriously bad. It looks like there's a million of them there. 1,344. What's the plan for the other sites? What's the plan for the other sites that aren't on Pruitt's priority list? Asked Nancy Loeb, director of the Environmental Advocacy Center at the Northwest University Pritzker School of Law. She said Pruitt's decision at Westlake might be a positive step, but added, it raises the question of whether Superfund is being used to showcase a few projects without actually doing more to clean up the contamination at all 1,300 sites. Meanwhile, the Trump administration has proposed cutting the Superfund program's budget by 30%, or by about $330 million annually. And while there are responsible companies that the EPA can legally force to pay for cleanups at many of the locations Pruitt has mentioned, many others are orphan sites where the polluters have gone bankrupt or are no longer legally liable for remedying the problem. At those, the federal government still shoulders most of the tab, and a pot of other available dollars keeps shrinking. Oh, and the pot of available dollars, of course it does. Every year since the Republicans have been in office, this fund has been shrinking. I'm concerned about orphan sites across the country in the Superfund portfolio, Pruitt said lawmakers on Capitol Hill this week. I think there's a greater challenge beyond money, but money matters in that side of our responsibilities. Pruitt highlighted Westlake early in his tenure at the EPA. The past administration didn't pay attention to it, he said on a local radio show in April. We're going to get things done at Westlake. The days of talking are over. In May, Pruitt took to television to say a plan was coming very soon. 8 months have passed since then, but families in the shadow of the Westlake, which have added to the Superfund program in 1990, are no strangers to waiting. The site's 200 acres include not just the radioactive waste illegally dumped in 1973, but also a former sanitary landfill. Decomposing trash is smoldering underground in what scientists call a subsurface burning event. There are concerns about the fire reaching the radioactive waste, though the companies there have taken numerous steps to prevent that. That is a lie. Over the years, residents have complained of quality of life and health problems, including a periodic stench in the air and anecdotal tales of cancer, autoimmune disorders, and miscarriages in adjacent neighborhoods. Wow. Talk about underplaying the gravity of the situation. At the same time, numerous air, water, and soil tests from the EPA and other government agencies have shown no link to such conditions. That is, you know why? They haven't done the studies. They haven't actually conducted the studies. This is such... I'm spitting nails right now. Let's get back to reading the story. Pruitt's plan will now be open for a period of public comment before it's finalized. And thank God that's the end of the story, because I was about to start really spitting nails. This is just unbelievable. This is why people do not believe that nuclear waste causes problems. Statements like this. Over the years, residents have complained of quality of life and health problems, including a periodic stench in the air and anecdotal tales of cancers, autoimmune disorders, and miscarriages in adjacent neighborhoods. At the same time, this is actually so misrepresentation what this is about. Numerous air, water, and soil tests from the EPA and other government agencies have shown no link to such conditions. That is a blatant, straight-out lie. That is such a lie, because they do know that numerous air, water, and soil tests comes from the stench. They know it comes from the landfill. And they have actually not conducted any studies about the autoimmune diseases or the cancers or the miscarriage. There have been no studies. This is just infuriating. I got to write this jerk and tell him he needs to think things through before he writes it down. Well, let's see. I don't want to read to you guys the nuclear alerts, because it's really murder, death, kill all over again. Watts Bar in Tennessee a few days ago. This was an interesting one. From February 5th, I was looking through them. It's the usual stuck shutters, people getting too much radioactivity when they go in for medical, missing tritium signs. But the one at Watts Bar, I thought this was interesting because it did not say no harm to human health. Right? Could have prevented the fulfillment of the function. There was a potential uncontrolled radiation relief at Watts Bar. They're at 100%. Somebody didn't do a valve and it went on fire. And they actually don't say no harm to human health. They just don't mention it. But this is an important story. Let's see. EPA blocks Obama-era clean water rule. This is a shock. This one is going to affect everyone, folks. This is a really bad one. I don't know if I have the full. I only have 10 minutes left to finish reading. Where is this from? This is from NewYorkTimes.com, written January 31st, 2018. And I just go to the Googles. This is what I do. I go to the Googles and I typed in nuclear waste and I clicked on news to see what would pop up. That's how I found the other stories. So this is another story. Let's see what that one is. Are you smarter than a nuclear launch officer? No, not that one. Let's see. Yeah, let's read the story. I think I have 10 minutes. We may not get through all of it, but you'll get the gist of what this guy's trying to say. The Trump administration has formally suspended a major Obama-era clean water regulation ahead of plans to issue its own version of the rule later this year. President Trump has taken aim at the bitterly contested rule known as the Waters of the United States since his campaign, calling it one of the worst examples of federal regulation. Among Trump's first action in office was an executive order directing the EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt to begin the legal process of rescinding the rule and replacing it with a more industry-friendly alternative. On Wednesday, Pruitt took a major step towards completing that task, filing the legal documents required to suspend the Obama rule for 2 years. The rule would be set to be implemented in the coming weeks following the Supreme Court decision last week that gave jurisdiction of the matter to district courts. Having suspended the water rule, Pruitt is now crafting a Trump administration version, which is expected to include much looser regulatory requirements on how farmers, ranchers, real estate developers must safeguard the streams and tributaries that flow through their properties and into larger bodies of water. The Obama Clean Water Regulation, which would have limited the use of pollutants like chemical fertilizers that could run off into small streams, came under fierce criticism from rural landowners that make up a key component of Trump's political base. Today, EPA is taking action to reduce confusion and provide certainty to American farmers and ranchers, Pruitt said in a statement. The 2015 WOTUS rule developed by the Obama administration will not be applicable for the next 2 years while we work through the process of providing long-term regulatory certainty across all 50 states about what waters are subject to federal regulation. Pruitt told the conference of state agriculture commissioners that he intends to issue a draft proposal of replacement water regulations in the spring and to final new rules this year, according to Politico. The Water of the United States rule, designed to limit pollutants in about 60% of the nation's bodies of water, was put forth by the EPA and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers in 2015. It had extended existing federal protections of large bodies of water, such as the Chesapeake Bay and Puget Sound, to smaller bodies of water to flow through them, such as rivers and small waterways and wetlands. Issued under the authority of the 1972 Clean Water Act, the rule has been hailed by environmentalists, but farmers, ranchers, and real estate developers oppose it as an infringement on their property rights. Republicans and state farms cheered the administration's move on Wednesday. The Obama administration's outrageous waters of the United States rule would have put backyard ponds, puddles, and farm fields under Washington's control, said Senator John Barrasso, the Wyoming Republican who is chairman of the Senate Environment and Public Works Committee. Today's action will give Wyoming's farmers, ranchers, and small businesses and communities clarity. Environmentalists, meanwhile, assailed the move and vowed to sue the administration, which, by the way, New York has. There's a story here that says February 1st, New York to sue EPA over Obama water rule. The Clean Water Rule protects the bodies of water that feed the drinking water supply for 1 in 3 Americans, said John Devine, a senior attorney for the Natural Resource Defense Council. EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt is racing the clock to deny protections of our public safety and health. It's grossly irresponsible and illegal, and we'll challenge it in court. And that's the end of the story. We have about 4 minutes left. So we can kind of see this theme here going on where we have this, they're heading us towards murder, death, kill, I guess. That's the plan. That seems to be the plan, folks. So we have a few minutes left. I think we can get in this EPA, this article about New York to sue EPA over Obama water rule delay. Let's hope they win. New York Attorney General Eric Schneiderman pledged Thursday to lead a multi-state lawsuit against the Trump administration for delaying a major water pollution rule. Schneiderman's statement one day after the EPA announced 2-day delay did not specify the states that would join him. Let me kind of cruise through this article and see if there's anything that they're actually giving us that is information other than blah, blah, blah. We hate Trump and we hate this rule. We hate them destroying our water. There's really nothing here. It's the same thing, you know. The Obama rule would have clarified the government's jurisdiction over small waterways like streams and wetlands under the Clean Water Act. That's essentially what it is. And what this actually really on doing is, allowing polluters just to pollute in small streams, and they don't have to clean up their mess. These are some very serious issues that we have going on, and these are not small things. Even a 2-year delay in these rules is seriously going to really harm some environments. 2 years can cause a lot of damage. For goodness sakes, I see we have about a minute left. I want to thank everybody who listens to our show and who supports us being out here every morning bringing you information that you don't really hear from anywhere else. I saw on a Facebook feed that our show is one of the few shows that talks about the escaping methane, which isn't one of my main directives, it's the age of fission, but I do keep up with it because I think it's related. I think the nuclear industry has caused part of the methane crisis because it's destroying the environment and allowing it to escape. Put your courage feet on, you guys. Really, that means take some action. Be devoted to taking right action every single day. It does matter. Thank you, KEPW, for carrying our show. And thanks to everybody who listens to us. We'll talk to you guys on Monday. Take care.